well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state. The right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Thanks so much for tuning into another edition of Bearing Arms, Cam and Company. My name is Cam Edwards. It is great to have you with us today. Going to get you caught up. Well, going to try to get you caught up. I mean, there is a fire hose of information these days coming in from around the country where the riots, the looting, and yes, peaceful protests do continue. And I know that there are some folks out there who say, well, it's all one of the same. It's not. It really isn't. Any more than the 20 or 30,000 or so gun owners that showed up at the Virginia State Capitol in January for a lobby day was a riot. Some of these protests, in fact, I think the majority of the protests that are taking place during the day are not riots. They don't involve looting. They are peaceful protests. They are expressions of our First Amendment right. But unfortunately, that is not all that we are seeing around the country, not by a long shot. So we're going to talk about how Americans are responding to the violence here, to the looting, to the riots that do continue to take place in cities across the country. And, one of the most fundamental ways that Americans are responding is by exercising their right to keep and bear arms. You have seen the long lines outside of gun stores around the country, starting on Monday of this week and continuing really each and every day. And it's not just gun ownership that is spiking right now. There are concealed carry applications around the country that are spiking. This story from Alabama. Surge in demand for concealed carry permits in several Alabama counties. This from ABC 3340 WBMA, talking about in Coleman County. They spoke with the Sheriff Matt Gentry, who said people are scared. Plain and simple. People are scared. He said, every day I'm getting a couple of hundred phone calls. People don't know what to expect, so they're coming out to protect themselves. According to the Alabama TV station, Coleman County saw record demand for the permits on Tuesday when 250 applications were processed in one day. The old record in Coleman County, Alabama, for concealed carry applications, 115 in one day. I mean, that is a staggering number. And the sheriff says he does not expect to see a let-up in the near future. He said, we had 7 to 10 people lined up ready to go when I showed up at the sheriff's office Wednesday morning. The TV station in Alabama says the demand is so great that the sheriff set up a tent outside of the office, dedicated more staff in order to process permits faster. Shelby County, Morgan County reporting a similar increase in demand for the concealed carry permits. And the sheriff there in Coleman County said people just simply want to be able to protect themselves and their families. He says, quote, I think there's a fear now of criminals, people that are not peaceful protesters, people that want to do bad things, coming and trying to hurt our community. So this story out of Alabama, but I'm guessing that we are seeing similar stories in similar long lines and similar demand, frankly, throughout the nation. Even in places where you might not expect to see this. Ran across another story out of Worcester, Massachusetts. And, in this one, I got to tell you, I think this really speaks to who it is that we're talking about here. Who are exercising the right to keep and bear arms. The media, I think, really wants to portray this as, oh, look, guys like Cam, only racist, are the only ones who are exercising their Second Amendment rights. Well, it's not just middle-aged white guys like me. God, I hate referring to myself as middle-aged, by the way. It's everybody. It's Americans who are exercising their Second Amendment rights. Headline from Worcester, Massachusetts. Owner of new Worcester restaurant that was vandalized following protests says he's armed and will defend his property. Gosh, can't believe that redneck there saying such hateful things. Actually, these owners from Vietnam originally, Tuan Huynh and Trem Huynh, are getting ready, or were getting ready anyway, to open up their new restaurant. Quan Cam Ga. It was supposed to open just a few weeks from now. And then Tuesday morning, business had 5 of its windows smashed. After a peaceful protest had ended, the Worcester Telegraph says a, quote, small group of protesters smashed in the windows. By the way, at that point, you're not protesters. At that point, you're rioters. At that point, you're vandals. Tuan says he's owned the company, or he's owned the property for about 2 months. He's working on renovations. They were planning to open on June the 8th, and now they can't. He says, I don't even have insurance yet. He said, I'm still waiting for the paper. I've already paid too much to fix it here already. I can't afford to pay all that. According to Worcester Telegraph, the crowd that was responsible for the damage had made their way to Main Street late Monday night, met by police with riot gear. Crowd lit fireworks, threw rocks at the officers. Officers in return fired multiple rounds of pepper balls and smoke grenades into the crowd of about 70 people. Tuan was watching this live on Facebook, and he saw that they were getting near his restaurant, and so he went to his business and was told by police to leave the scene. And now, he says, I will defend my property if the police won't. He said, quote, they can't even protect my business. They kicked me out of my business, which is wrong. He says, everybody's trying to make a living here. We don't have time for them going around damaging other people's property. It's just not right. I actually support what they have to do for the human rights. 100% support for what they've done. But when it comes to this point, where it gets too personal, I'm not going to let that happen to my business. His wife said, we don't know what will happen next. Nobody does, but we're here and we're prepared. I'm ready to protect my business. Her husband said, if you come to my business, you will get shot. That's all I'll tell you. I have my gun on me now, and they will be shot. Again, people like this couple in Massachusetts who have sunk their life savings into a restaurant so they can build something that maybe they can pass on to their kids and their grandkids. People who see this country with all of its flaws, but also with all of its opportunity, who just want the chance to build something of their own and who have seen it taken from them. The Hoons in Worcester, Mass., I think are indicative of a lot of the business owners that we have seen around the country who have been standing guard, protecting their property, protecting their neighborhoods, protecting their communities. Now, I will say this. The Hoons talked about how they saw this crowd approaching their business on Facebook Live, and they're like, well, okay, we got to get down there. And they were told by the police, hey, you got to leave. Listening to or watching this program, I am a supporter of law enforcement. I don't buy into the defund police movement. We got to talk about that at some point, though. And how defund police, how do you square that with we need more gun control laws? Because I'm not sure that actually works, but that's probably a topic for another show. I believe in law enforcement, but I also understand that cops can make mistakes and cops can do bad things, and that you have to examine these cases individually. So there's a case out of Milwaukee that is a little concerning. WISN reporting on this the other day. A gentleman who was out at one of these protests in Milwaukee, arrested for having a gun. The only problem is that he's a concealed carry holder. And as he was being arrested, his friend is pleading with officers, check his wallet. Check his wallet. Because that's where his concealed carry license was. Brandon Love is the guy who was out there with his friend Omar Buchanan. Buchanan was the one who was arrested. Brandon Love's filming all of this. And again, shouting, look at his wallet, look at his wallet. He said, I told him, sir, check his wallet. All you got to do is check his wallet. He's perfectly legal. There's nothing else to be talked about. Just check his wallet, please. They didn't even try. Now, after this arrest, Milwaukee police sent out a tweet saying that officers had ordered protesters to disperse, writing, quote, a suspect with a gun who was in the crowd was taken into custody by the Milwaukee Police Department. Okay, that may be true, but it also leaves out a lot of information, doesn't it? As WISN says, the tweet did not provide any context on whether or not the gun was legal. It also did not identify a crime that the person that they called a suspect was accused of committing. Brandon Love says, look, we just have our handguns here to protect us. And this is how you treat us. You treat us like criminals. We're guilty until proven innocent. He said this was a double standard, citing the demonstrations in Madison in April where people were protesting the stay-at-home order, openly carrying rifles at the state capitol with no problem. He said Buchanan's license to carry meant nothing during the encounter with police. He said it's a sin because of our skin. We're being held to a standard of your criminals, your thugs, because we're black. because we're out here protesting and fighting for our rights. We know that we shouldn't have to deal with these kinds of things, and it's hurt, and it hurts, and it's sad, and we can't take it anymore. Well, WISN followed up, and about 24 hours after the arrest had been made, Milwaukee police provided a emailed explanation. Lieutenant Eric Gulbranson wrote there was an arrest, and the arrest was based on the subject's actions with the gun, not on the fact that the subject had a gun. The reason for the tweet was because the subject's actions were not consistent with someone either utilizing open carry or their CCW, and therefore not consistent with a peaceful protest. Okay, so what actions were they? Again, the police didn't elaborate. Brandon Love said he doesn't buy it. He said as his friend Omar Buchanan ran, somehow it fell, his holster fell. He picked it up, he put it back. It was still in the holster. In other words, he never took out his gun and displayed it. And Brandon Love says despite having a legal right to carry the gun, police have so far not returned it to Omar Buchanan. He said Buchanan spent $500 to get out of jail, received a citation for disorderly conduct. And in a Facebook post, Omar Buchanan wrote, in compliance with my CCW license, my weapon was concealed. This is why we're marching and fighting. Thanks, MPD, for the disorderly conduct ticket, even though I did not commit a crime. Well, we're going to follow that story and any others because, and listen, you know, gun owners, black and white, can tell you about encounters that they may have had with police where the fact that they were exercising their Second Amendment right did not sit well with an officer. I think all of us have heard those types of stories. Regardless of the rationale, I don't know the character of the officers here. I don't know if this was a racist in intent. If this was, well, there's a black guy with a gun, let's go ahead and arrest him. I don't know. Probably going to be impossible to find out. But what I do know is that if Omar Buchanan really was at a peaceful protest and he was lawfully carrying his firearm and it happened to, his holster happened to fall and he picked it up, as his friend says, that should not have led to his arrest. Plain and simple. Now, hopefully we can get more video footage. There's some video footage of Buchanan being arrested, but I don't know if there's any actual footage showing the moments before Buchanan's arrest. But, I do see stories like this, and it does bother me because our right to keep and bear arms is an American right. It's not a right of the right. It's not a right of white people. It is a right of the people. Plain and simple. Can't get any more simple than that, as a matter of fact. Right of the people, keep and bear arms, shall not be infringed. All right, let's get to today's armed citizen story, our recidivist report, and our good deed of the day. We'll start with our recidivist report, also from the unrest in Providence, Rhode Island. And ex-con with a lengthy criminal history among those arrested in Providence, Rhode Island, following a night of rioting. This, according to WBSM in New Bedford. They say 24-year-old Bruno Lopez of New Bedford, among more than 60 people taken into custody in Providence, Rhode Island, either Monday night or Tuesday morning, according to a list of arrestees released by the Providence Police Department. Lopez, according to WBSM, appears to be the New Bedford man who, in broad daylight, May 14th, 2018, shot a handgun at a vehicle being driven by a rival gang member. New Bedford police found in his possession a .38 caliber handgun, ammunition, and drugs. A man with the same name, same address, same date of birth, in June of 2019, was convicted by a jury and sentenced to jail for attempted assault and battery by discharge of a firearm. It's not clear, the radio station says, when Lopez was released from the Bristol County House of Correction. But apparently, he spent less than a year behind bars after firing shots at somebody on the streets there of New Bedford, Massachusetts. Yeah, less than a year. At the time of his arrest, according to WBSM, Lopez had 9 open cases in the New Bedford District Court, had failed to appear in court more than a dozen times. His history included 12 adult arraignments on charges including assault and battery with a deadly, dangerous weapon, assault and battery, possession of a narcotic with intent to distribute, Providence police didn't say what the current charges against Lopez happen to be. Governor Gina Raimondo in Rhode Island said earlier this week that those engaged in destruction and looting in the city came prepared to wreak havoc, were not associated with peaceful demonstrators. That may very well be the case. A curfew's been set in the city. Things have calmed down a little bit. But clearly, again, not everyone showing up at these events is out to be peaceful. We had a couple of stories yesterday at Bearing Arms. Two guys in Salt Lake City, including one who's a convicted felon, threatening officers on social media and then driving to a protest in Salt Lake City with, I think, 4 guns in their car. You had another convicted felon who was tossing mortars at officers in California. When they detained him and eventually searched his home, they found that the convicted felon had several firearms and ammunition there in his home as well. Then you've got this gang member in New Bedford, Massachusetts, who's out there at the riots in Providence, Rhode Island. And yes, you also have apparently some anti-government types, the quote-unquote Boogaloo Boys, 3 of them arrested in Las Vegas, Nevada, after hoping to use the riots and the unrest to further more violence there. By the way, of all of those stories, guess which one the national media is focused on? That's right, the one with the Boogaloo Boys. And I'm not ignoring it. But I hate these simplistic narratives that we're seeing here by the media. The only people who want to cause trouble here are the right-wing extremists. There may very well be right-wing extremists who want to cause trouble at these protests. There are also left-wing extremists who want to cause trouble at these protests. There are also violent criminals who want to cause trouble at these protests. There are individuals who have no criminal record. There are bored college kids who want to smash windows. I mean, that's the thing. There's not just one group of people that's responsible for the violence and for the looting that has taken place amidst the legitimate exercise of our First Amendment rights. All right. I keep climbing back up on this soapbox today for some reason. I don't know why that is. On to our armed citizen story of the day. Mesquite, Texas, where a robbery victim shot and killed a suspect after the robbery victim shot him first. This is from CBS in Dallas, Fort Worth, where they say that police, it happened around 1:30 Tuesday morning. Officers responding to a shooting in Mesquite, and we came across an injured person who actually had been the one to call authorities. He said that he had been the victim of a robbery by 3 people that he did not know. He was shot. He shot back at one of the suspects, killing him. The deceased suspect has been identified. Police haven't released the name publicly. They say that the next of kin are being notified. 2 other suspects got away. The robbery victim, not expected to face any charges. Police haven't released any information about who that victim is either, but it appears that he was acting in self-defense. And finally, our good deed of the day. Again, we go back to the idea that we have to look at people based on their individual actions as opposed to just taking a look at somebody and assuming you know everything about them. A lot of protests over the police. We've seen the reports around the country. We talked with Julio Rosas from Town Hall about what happened in Minneapolis when he got hit center mass with a rubber bullet, even though he was nowhere near protesters. There are, I think, mistakes that are being made. There are wrong decisions, bad decisions being made by some law enforcement officers, as they're responding to the riots, to the looting, to the unrest, and as they're standing guard over legitimate protests. There are also officers who are doing the right thing. And to try to paint every police officer as an awful person or a racist or a killer is as wrong as trying to portray every police officer as a saint, quite frankly. But in Arkansas, just a little story here. That is an Arkansas state trooper who was helping to change the tire on the news vehicle of Fox 16 late on, I believe this was late Tuesday evening, early Wednesday morning. Fox 16 says law enforcement spotted helping one of our own KARK photojournalists capture this photo of a member of the Arkansas State Police helping to change the tire on one of our news vehicles. We send our thanks to that officer and the department. Again, it's a little thing, But, if enough of us do the little things, it adds up to big things, doesn't it? So, as we have people right now, not even just people, it comes back down to people. I was going to say organizations, industries even, but it does ultimately come down to people. As we have Americans who are trying to rip us apart right now, with the promise that once everything has been burned to the ground, they can build a utopia on the ashes. I think it is important and incumbent on us to try to find ways to find common ground with as many of our fellow Americans as we can. We talked about this with Maj Toure from Black Guns Matter yesterday about how this is not ultimately right versus left, red versus blue, black versus white. This is about those who support freedom versus those who support tyranny. We will not always agree on each and every topic and each and every subject, but if that's the dividing line, those who believe in freedom versus those who believe in tyranny, those who believe in community versus those who believe in anarchy, then all of a sudden, allies and opponents look a little bit different than when we start trying to slice and dice us based on our race or where we live or who we vote for. And again, during these perilous times, I do hope that we can find ways to come together. Certainly one of the ways that Americans are doing that is coming together in defense of their neighborhoods, of their communities, of their businesses, and of their families. We'll be back tomorrow with more from around the nation, but thank you so much for tuning into this edition of Bearing Arms Cam and Company. Don't forget, you can subscribe to Town Hall Media, that way you never miss a program, or Bearing Arms Cam and Company on Apple Podcasts or any of the other fine podcast platforms. Until we talk again, be safe, be well, be free. We'll see you soon with more Bearing Arms Cam and Company.